Well, guys, just so you know, we just recorded this entire thing. It was probably a, hour long? Hour and a half?
Maybe, yeah.
Conversation. It was amazing. There were tears. It was awesome. And I got up to check the camera and turn it off, and I realized that I hadn't pressed record. And so we're about to pumped to be here with you guys. Y'all, thanks for joining us.
Welcome
today.
To
round two of
Take two.
Fireside Chats.
We should just have the Netflix fireplace. You can't see it, but know that it is there.
We got a fire, everybody.
We got a fire.
We got a fire. Anyway, this is Ceci. If you don't know her, she is one of my heroes, closest friends, and wow, I'm honored. Every time I talk to Ceci, I'm always just blown away by how she knows God as a father and as a friend and as a lover and as all of the things that God is to us. She embodies friendship with Jesus. And so wanted to bring her here to this couch today to talk about having a whole heart and really engaging with God with our entire lives. Because right now in this season, we are in a place where quarantine has kind of been like this great unveiling of everything that's inside of us, and almost like exposing all the things that we leaned on before or the things that we fell into. Oh, guys, Joanne's cleaning the windows. Shout out to Joanne Snook. What a hero.
An incredible woman, for sure.
She's amazing. Anyway, the things that are inside of us are being exposed, and we can either choose to run to them and run to what God's doing, or we can choose to numb. So, Cess.
Yes, Emily.
For the second time,
Ask me.
take me in to what you have been learning during quarantine.
Beautiful. I would love to. The fire's still going, by the way. So have been learning about emotions.
We love a good emotion.
Particularly tears and the role that they play in our response and the way that we come before the Father. And so particularly there was this podcast I was listening to about power of tears, and the story that they used for point of reference was when Lazarus is raised from the dead. And it talks about how Martha and Mary both came to the Father, to Jesus, and they both had the exact same response verbally, but emotionally their response was different.
Wow.
And so Martha comes to Jesus and says, "If you had been here, my brother would still be alive." And then she says something along the lines of, "But I know that the Father will do as he wills." And then Jesus encourages her, and then he calls Mary over, and Mary comes before Jesus, falls at his feet, and says the exact same words as Martha. But her response emotionally, her connection was different. And it says that after that, the Father was moved and that Jesus wept.
Man.
And that just stirs me up,
So
of the reality
So good.
that the Father so desires connection with us, and the reality that Jesus didn't leave Mary in her pain. He didn't leave Mary in her mourning by herself. He joined her, and so he wept with her, and he sat with her. And I think of all the times in my life where I've experienced pain or hurt or even joy, some of the best days of my life. Jesus is sitting there with me, and he's laughing with me, and he's enjoying it with me, or he's crying with me. He's meeting me in the midst of the hurt, and I'm never truly going alone.
It's really true. I think something that JD said in one of our meetings was that there's a difference between being an optimist and being a person of faith. And how you can engage in a situation with your full emotions, anger, bitterness, fear, joy, whatever.
Yeah.
Engage it fully and be a person of faith. Whereas an optimist would just always be like, this is great. Like, things are going to be amazing. Things are going to be good.
Yeah.
But as followers of Jesus, you were saying this about how Jesus was fully man. Like, can you say that again? Like, God was...
Yeah. I just thinking about how God sent Jesus, and he was fully God, but he was also fully man. And there's something really beautiful in that reality, because Jesus felt everything that we felt.
Yeah, wow.
You know, he went through pain, he went through joy, he went through those exciting emotions of seeing your friends, you know, like he felt everything. He was fully man. Like I have never met a single person who has not felt emotion, you know, who has not felt joy, who has not felt heartache, who's not felt anxiety or loneliness, you know, and so it's just really cool to think of the reality that Jesus felt everything.
Wow.
And so we aren't alone in any of our emotions. He understands them and he knows them well because he experienced them.
Yeah.
He has this firsthand encounter with it, and so nothing is too far off.
Man.
You know, he understands everything because he lived it.
So
which is so
good.
beautiful, because then it makes it easier to feel understood when you know that someone has experienced what you have been going through or are going through or whatever.
So true.
One of the places where I felt like the Father was showing me that I've been growing numb or kind of just shutting off my emotions was when it came to dating and feeling very kind of apathetic towards it, but also really not apathetic at all. I don't know what the opposite of that would be. But yeah, kind of feeling overwhelmed by the idea of dating, primarily because it opens up a lot of wounds and a lot of hurt, and which a lot of those things we've processed, but there's also this other measure of when you like someone, you know, it feels a little more vulnerable because it's hard to not want a specific outcome.
Yeah.
And when that outcome doesn't happen, there's this hurt that happens in you because you were excited about something. And so I think rather than going through that, I chose to not, in the sense of just completely shutting off that part of my heart and not even letting myself like a guy. I would convince myself out of crushes pretty quickly.
So much easier.
I would give myself all the reasons why I didn't like them or why they wouldn't choose me, and kind of discount myself and say, well, no, it's like never gonna happen, so it's fine. And then so I would like walk around and I would operate out of this place of, I'm just gonna assume we're just friends until I'm told otherwise. And that was like my rule of thumb, but it became this cover for, if I pretend or can convince myself that I don't like this person, then I won't be hurt or offended if they don't choose me in return.
So real.
And so then,
real.
if I didn't like them to begin with, then I don't have to have that conversation with God, because technically I never liked them.
Yeah.
And so then that was kind of like my little what do people call it? Yeah, like my protection
defense
or
mechanism.
Yeah, kind of like my defense mechanism of. Do you know what I'm talking about? Wow, wait, what is the word though? It's kind of like my safety net, I guess.
Safety net.
Yeah, or my security blanket, kind of just
weighted blanket.
Oh, I love weighted blankets. I'd probably sweat so much under one of those though. They get so hot.
I've never tried one.
Oh, Brookie has one. Maybe she'll let you borrow it.
Brooklyn, I'm coming to your house
That's
after
snow.
this, except I can't.
I went to her house.
Ride
today.
your bike to my house, buddy.
Yeah, so kind of it was just like my safety net. So I would just use that as a way to protect myself, and also to keep me from having to go into those conversations with the Father. And I remember I was talking to you about this a couple of months, I think it was last year, but we were talking about how I basically had gotten to this point where I had decided that I never wanted to look at a boy ever again. Very extreme. I was
We love a good extreme.
I was like,
all
Emily,
or nothing. All or nothing.
That's where
Draw
I live
the
my whole
line.
life from. You're either hot or you're cold.
Yeah.
Spits out the lukewarm.
I'm gonna run a marathon, or I'm not
Or
gonna
I'm
run
not
at
gonna
all.
run ever.
That's
yeah. That's how I viewed dating. No, thank you.
It's fine. Been there.
Far away
Feel
from
that.
using. But yeah, I basically just decided unanimously that I was not gonna ever look at a boy again. I was just gonna, everyone was gonna be my friend, and I was gonna be fine, and I wasn't ever gonna like anyone, and I wasn't gonna think about dating, and it was just
The amount of
off
times
limits.
that I've said I was gonna be a
Yep.
nun, not out of like a place of like, wow, I want to like really
Holy
serve the
nope.
Lord. I'm just like, I can't do the whole dating thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna forget it. I've done that many times.
Same. Yeah.
It's real.
So anyways, we talked about
Anyway.
it. And I remember I was talking to you, and I said, I just want to go numb. Like I want to turn it off completely. And you asked me this question, and you said, Ceci, there's a difference between guarding your heart and numbing your heart. And I remember going home and thinking on that for a while of what is the difference?
Yeah.
Why is it that the Father says time and time again, guard your heart, but numbing your heart obviously is not the word that he ever uses.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, I said, God, what's the difference? Like, why is one better than the other? Because obviously one is better than the other. And he simply said, Ceci, you can love me and serve the people around you and love them well while guarding your heart. But you can't serve people and love them well and numb it. You also can't love me and serve me while numbing your heart. And then he showed me this picture of an apple that had a little bit of it that was rotting, and then kind of fast forward through, and a couple weeks later you look at the same apple and the whole thing has gone bad. And he said, Ceci, this is what you do to your heart when you numb a piece of it. It starts off with this one area, which in this case it could be dating, just like numbing my heart off to dating. But then that also numbs me to friendships and relationships, and then eventually it completely rots my whole heart, and my whole heart has become numb simply because of one moment, or one thing that I was too scared.
So good. It's so good, and it's so real. It's
Yeah.
so much easier to shut down any emotion than to fully live it, because of the risk of pain and the risk of disappointment, or even like if it's a joyful emotion, like the risk of it not being that anymore, or that shifting. And
it's kind of that idea of pushing something away before it has the chance to push you away. And I feel like that is that's what numbness is. You run away from something before it can leave you, or it can not choose you, or whatever.
Especially when like if your history has told you something over time, like say with a parent, like so-and-so has a fight with their dad over and over and over again, that has built up years and years of pain, and it's easier to just like numb it and shut it off and be like, I'm not gonna touch that anymore because probably it's gonna disappoint me again. But the Lord, like what you're saying with Mary and Martha, like he wants to be with us in the emotion and in those places so that he can heal it, like the apple, or like a wound. Like you don't just cover up a wound with a Band-Aid. You wash it out and you let it mend. Then you cover it up. You know. There's a C.S. Lewis quote that I think is perfect. Here we go. C.S. Lewis, what a guy. He says, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, then you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, and motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. And I think even going with like Corinthians in the love chapter of like, if you do this, this, and this, but have not love, then it's meaningless. And if you care for the poor and you do all this stuff but have not love, it's meaningless. And I think in this combo, even there's this invitation from God to be like, wow, I want to live wholeheartedly, not numb, but fully feeling every scope of emotion with Jesus and let him heal it. And I love this quote, the wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries. I think right now in particular, there's this intense invitation of, hey, there's so much healing that can take place because you're at home, you're with your parents, with your family, and there could be hurt there, like old wounds that need to be healed, or you're not with your friends and you miss them, and like God wants to do so much in your heart right now. But you could just choose to binge watch Tiger King, you know, or like something crash landing on you, as you would say.
We love the Korean dramas.
But there, in those, I mean, like, watching stuff in itself is not bad, but if you're choosing that to numb in a place of numbing, then that's where opportunity gets missed.
Yeah, and I think even it's a really great opportunity to analyze, what are you running to? You know, what is most of your time being invested in? Because there is entertainment in itself isn't bad. You know, but when we confuse entertainment for rest, that's where you find yourself becoming more annoyed or becoming more prone to frustrations or anxiety or loneliness, because the things that you're doing aren't things that are producing any helpful fruit. But if I'm sitting down and I'm listening to a podcast or reading scripture or writing songs, then the fruit of it becomes that I am increasing in peace, that I'm increasing in desire for God or intimacy or friendship, you know? And so it's just analyzing, what are you spending your time on? If you're, and I mean, our phones do it for us now. You know, they can show you how much time you're spending on apps. What are the things that you're going to for comfort? And I think what a beautiful opportunity to see those things and to choose something different in place of it.
Good. I think it's key that what you were saying was that Mary versus Martha, like Martha did the action but had no heart in it. Mary did the same action but had her heart in it. And so like even in our days now of like, oh, you're going on a run, like go on a run with Jesus. You're playing Xbox, play Xbox with Jesus. I think there's ways that we can activate our hearts to come alive. And it's a practiced, I mean, even our literal hearts are muscles, you know? And so our spiritual hearts are also, I like to think of them as muscles. Like you work them out and you grow in it. And I went through multiple times. I've been through these like seasons where I've just felt so numb, or like I was going through the motions, almost like in Ezekiel, where it's like the dry bone army has come to life, but there's no breath in them, and felt like, man, I'm going through the motions, but I have no feeling. I was like, God, I need a defibrillator, you know, I need you to like put your paddles of life on me and be like, come back to life. And I think some ways of doing that practically are through prayer. Like if you feel apathetic towards something or a situation, like ask God for his heart for that situation. It happened to me earlier this week. I was super apathetic about a certain conversation that needed to be had, and I was like, I don't even really care about this person and moment, in full honesty. And I laid down on my bed and I was like, God, I need your heart, like, and just started blessing this person and being like, God, thank you for so and so, thank you for the way that they're so and so, whatever. And after that, I kid you not, immediately I was like, I love this person, like, and it was God's heart. It's not my heart. I'm not a loving person naturally, but God is. God in me, you know, is full of life. And so I think prayer defibrillates, shocks your heart back to life. And then we were talking earlier about journaling, and what were some of the things that you were saying about that?
Yeah, I think for me, what's helpful sometimes is going into my times with God and not having an agenda for it. And I mean, I think that there's a lot of value in structure, because it is a heart muscle, you know, of spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer, spending time in worship. And the more that you do it, the easier it is to continue to do it. You know, the more that you read the Word, the easier it is to understand. The more that you pray, the easier it is to do it for longer, and to build that endurance. But I think that there is also there's something really sweet about going into it and not having a set agenda, and asking God, okay, God, what should we do today? What do you want to do? And sometimes for me that looks like going on runs, and when I run, I like to pray, and so I'll just ask God as I'm running, okay, what do you want to pray for next? And cool. He'll bring things or people to mind, and as I'm running, I'm getting excited, you know, because you're just like interceding, and you're out of breath and you're exhausted, and you're like, oh, but I just want to keep going. This is great, and I love this. But it's fun, because it is something where I could choose to run and just listen to music and not really think about anything, or I could choose to run and use that as a time to connect with Him and to talk to Him, but also build my muscle for intercession. Awesome. And build a relationship
intercession
with Him.
While you build your other muscles.
Yeah, that's how we do it, baby.
That's right. Get swole, glow up during quarantine. That's it.
That's what we want. That's it. Brand new women. I was gonna say woman, but we're women. I can't talk. But yeah, so that's like something that's been really fun for me. Another thing is I do like to watercolor, and so sometimes I'll ask God for like verses or things that, or even things that He's been talking to me about, and I'll try to think of a way to portray that in an image. And sometimes it does mean just going onto Google and looking up an alabaster jar or you know, I don't know, a museum or something. And other times it is something that's really abstract and doesn't make any sense to anybody else, but in my heart it makes sense, and it is kind of fun, because it's something that is uniquely mine and His. And I think that ultimately the more that we know Him, the more that we gain His heart, and the more alive we become, because we're realizing all of the things that are on His heart, and He imparts them into us, and we can carry them fully, and in a way I feel like He trusts us with it, you know, because He's like giving us all these different giftings, and He's seeing what we do with them, and then He's like increasing our giftings as we go along. So
super cool. So fun. I think we believed for 2020 winter retreat, our theme was fully alive. What does it look like to be alive? And I think that was so prophetic of like, in this year we're going to be a people who's fully alive, every corner of our heart, every emotion, every place. And I just want to dive into that and keep saying yes to Jesus and inviting Him into every emotion, and be like Mary, who came before God and was like, this is my heart and I trust you even in it. And I think if you are fully alive, you will not be bored, because there's no boredom in the kingdom of heaven. And it's this place of, if we're gonna fully live and experience all of who God is and who He's made us to be, you will not be bored. And
oh, what a good guy. Just the best guy I've ever met.
And you know, the best ever is Ceci right here. So thank you, Cess. I feel like every time we talk, it just gets richer. So we might go for a round 3 after this, just to get more goodness. Why not?
More content.
But hey, thanks for coming. And if you guys have questions about being fully alive, text us, call us, and reach out to the leaders. And we love y'all.
Love y'all. What was your little
We did it. It's still recording.